Did you know the ESCO HVAC podcast? Join us from your favorite podcast network as we share stories and lessons from industry professionals like you. Find all of the ESCO resources at escogroup.org. Well, thank you all for joining Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. We are so excited to talk about things that we learned from the conference and opportunities for next year at the conference. And one of the things that we've noticed a lot, quite a significant trend, is the amount of young technicians coming into our industry. Even at our own conference, we had a significant amount of first-year educators at the conference. First time to the conference, first time in the actual programs. So we wanted to help build resources so that we can make sure that we empower our new educators with all of the opportunities. We'll have one of our new podcasts, which we'll talk about that a little bit later today, the new podcast opportunities coming out. One of them was Greg Castro, new educator that is looking for resources and was just blown away by the opportunities he found at our conference. Like myself, 2019, I had started teaching in 2018. 2019 came to the conference and my mind just went, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. So Eugene, Renee, Howard, thank you so much for hanging out today. And we're all going to take some pieces and talk about different resources that we have as we make that transition into the industry. You know, Howard, you say it often, you know, what is it like when we come from the field and we go into the classroom?
You know, at ESCO, we make a habit of trying to call every new instructor that signs up to be a proctor. They all start very excited. I got this job. I'm so excited. Then you talk to them a few weeks later and they seem deflated because that transition from the field to the classroom is daunting. Most people are basically handed keys, teach HVAC like it's a singular subject. It's the same everywhere. Good luck with your program advisory committee. I look forward to seeing you at the Christmas party. Wait, where's the onboarding to how do I teach? What do I teach? Are there lesson plans? And they feel like they're out there by themselves.
On an island.
Right. And so while we may not be able to do everything, we have a lot of people who spent a lot of years in the classroom. And that's part of what I think today's show is about, is to try and help everyone out there, whether you're new to the class or you've been doing it a while and don't know what to do. We want to help.
Absolutely. Renee, I mean, how many calls do we get coming in for instructors looking for resources of how to build their programs and what tools they need and what curriculum they need and how do I become a proctor? I mean, is it a pretty regular call there at the office?
It is a regular call, and we're really happy to talk about this today because this is my bailiwick. This is the thing that I love to do, is work with instructors and help find those resources and things that will help them improve their programs, because in turn we're improving the entire industry because of it.
Absolutely. And Eugene, you spend a lot of time out with colleges and, you know, seeing what's happening in our industry, especially in your local area. Have you seen that as a shift yourself with a much younger generation of educators coming in from the field?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of younger teachers. And one of the things that they often express to me when I speak to them is they feel that they need to reinvent the wheel. They're the only person to ever stand in front of a classroom and teach HVAC. And I think one of the big things that we offer is an eye-opening experience to let especially our new teachers know that they don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Right. There's a network.
There have been many, many teachers before them that have basically created the path for them. And, you know, they're fortunate that we have these resources available to them so they can concentrate on mastering their craft, on delivering.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of new tools. That's one of the resources that we have, is those new tools that we need to acquire once we go into the classroom. So we spent a little bit of time and picked out the top 10 things that we feel are necessary for being successful in our program, whether it's a first-year educator coming into the program trying to decide what all tools and resources we need, or someone who is re-looking at their department going, okay, Have we been as successful as we need to be? Are there things that we can tap into? Mel, thanks for joining us. Mohammed, anyone out there, let us know where you're chiming in from, and we really encourage you to participate with this. So, yeah, boy, Mel, you want to come back here in a few weeks because we're going to have an entire lesson on using our mentors to help teach our generations. So programs that are designed for even our retirees and our experienced educators to help mentor some of our younger educators. So yeah, good point. Thank you. So let's think about these 10 steps. Let's run through them real quick and then we'll break them down and show you where some of these resources are. So if we're talking about getting started in our program or reevaluating our program, there's one step that is easy to miss. And if you miss this, there's going to be a lot of resources that you might not ever really find. So one of the first things we want to do is we want to get connected into the network. So we want to go and start our account on the HVACR Learning Network. It's going to be a directive to get you tools to go in multiple directions. So it all starts with getting connected. And after we get connected into our network, we want to make sure that we cover all of the basic competencies. We want to make sure that we're selecting proper curriculum. We want to make sure that we are a proctor so that we can handle assessments for our students. We want to make sure that we're connecting to the HERN network, which we'll talk about that one here in a second, that acronym, so that we have resources for our programs, for our equipment. We need to make sure that our program aligns with industry standards. We want to make sure that we're maintaining a professional level of certifications for ourselves and all of our instructors. We also want to make sure that we build a strong advisory committee to support our program. And then we want to keep continuing education. And then we want to make sure that we stay apprised with changes, new standards, and technologies in industry. And that's really what we are supporting. We're supporting all of these pieces of our industry that are in your lap. And if you're a first-time educator, man, Eugene, you remember that first year coming into the program and going, okay, where's my binder? Someone surely got me a binder of a step-by-step operation of how to run this place, isn't there?
Yeah, right. I think Howard had it best. I mean, here's the key to the classroom. See you at the Christmas tree. That's kind of what it was.
Absolutely. Mel, thanks for joining in from Dallas. Glad to have you out there with us. All right, so let's take a look at an instructor resource map. So step one, right? We're going to register for our account on the HVACR Learning Network so that gets us connected to all of our resources. So Howard, Renee, Eugene, anyone want to talk a little bit about the progression of this learning network? Because it wasn't here 10 years ago. Really wasn't even here 5 years ago.
We could talk about the progression, but I think what people need to know, going back to that goofy picture you had of that straight map with all those roads.
Oh boy.
A lot of times the path to success in a classroom isn't always obvious. There's all these ways, and every time we go down the wrong road, it takes us that much longer to get back where we want. So a lot of what we want to try and help new instructors do is give them a roadmap to what is going to make them successful.
Yes.
That straight path. Eugene and I joked, years ago, we used to all stop in a gas station. You get a map, it was a blueprint, how to go from point A to point B. It's a lot of what we're trying to do here. So the HVAC Learning Network, we've been putting a lot of resources in. There's a whole channel just for instructors, which has things such as, how do I run a program advisory committee meeting? How do I best lab practices?
Sure.
How to be an effective instructor.
Yeah. How do I learn how to teach? A lot of us don't have those skills when we come out of the field. Matt, thanks for joining in from Detroit. Mel, absolutely. I'll connect with you probably tomorrow, and we'll start making some connections in your area. So, we start making that transition. We need our resources. So we get connected into the learning network. So we at least have a landing place where we can start pinpointing the needs that we have for our program. So that's our foundation. So once we start there, now let's look at, okay, what are we teaching? And let's make sure that we're covering some basic competencies. Well, what is that? What are the competencies within a program?
Well, to make certain that someone's covering the basic competencies, a lot of us say, I'm a brand new teacher. What should I teach?
Yeah.
You could spend countless hours trying to figure this out. We actually have already done this. So we have a committee of people located throughout the United States from different backgrounds who put together the basic knowledge and skills that entry-level people should have. What's beautiful about it, it's a free resource to instructors. So you're going to see the core knowledge that should be in most programs. So if you download this, if you go to escogroup.org, on the bottom you'll see competency and task list. Download it. It's an Excel spreadsheet. There's different tabs, whether you're teaching electrical, heat pumps, air conditioning. Tells you exactly what should be covered in the program.
So let's just go take a look at it for a minute. Eugene, you've got a fantastic story just about how you got into the industry, even looking at what the material was that was being taught in the classroom. You mind sharing a little bit of that with us?
Oh yeah, my first I'll call it bout, because I definitely got knocked out with teaching. I didn't even expect to become a teacher. I was answering a want ad in a newspaper. I don't know if people know what a newspaper is, but it's actually
There's still some of them out there.
And I answered a want ad for a technician, and I showed up, and it turns out that it was a trade school in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And after some discussion back and forth, I agreed to join the school, and they were going to teach me, they were going to train me to become a teacher. And this was supposed to start out with a 5-week period where I would sit in the classroom and observe how classes were conducted and how to teach this class. And the morning I showed up at work, very eager to sit in the back of the room and be an active observer of the class, the teacher called up and quit. So the chairman of the refrigeration department at the time handed me a set of 4 brand new dry erase markers and eraser.
Are you interested in a promotion?
Room 603, all yours. So a lot of times we get thrown into a teaching scenario not knowing exactly what it is we need to teach. And one of the challenges that teachers often face is the fact that many people in our industry have no formal training in HVAC. And where do we get our teachers from? We get our teachers from the field.
Right out of the field.
So now we have somebody from the field in front of a classroom teaching a subject they would never be formally trained on, with no formal training on how to teach.
Absolutely.
So I think I would have become a lot better teacher quicker had I known about a resource such as this, because HVAC programs vary greatly from across the country.
Absolutely.
They have to cater to their local region. HVAC requirements, you teach a lot more air conditioning in Miami,
In
Florida,
one area, absolutely.
Alaska. So HVAC programs vary greatly from area to area to area. So it's really, really important. The fundamentals are the fundamentals. We need to know basic cycle. We need to know basic electricity. But every specific niche that makes up an HVAC program has different competencies and tasks that need to be taught
And need to be covered. Absolutely. Anthony, thanks for joining us. Yeah, this is the information for you, my friend. So hop in here, hang out with us, and check every one of these resources out. These are the things to help make you successful. So we appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Clifton, I'd like to add something. This is not part of what you planned for the show, but looking at this, first of all, if you don't mind blowing that up, for those who don't have Clark Kent vision, so we can see it a little bit.
I thought this was an eye test.
Oh, I failed it. So the reason I bring this up is I want to share something. So every test we give, whether it be the high school test, the college test, technician or teacher, are all based on these same competencies. Why is that important? Because if instructors really get to know these really well, which we'll show you how to do that in a minute.
Sure.
Eugene and I did a class a few years ago, and it was called Improving Student Outcomes. And what we were showing is how, let's say, the employment ready tests, which are used by most of the community colleges,
right,
and our credentialing tests, have very different questions, but they're based on the same competencies. And what we found is that the teachers' results and the students' results mirror each other. Where the
absolutely
excel, it's where the teachers excel. Where the student struggles, where the teachers struggle. So every teacher should download this and become very familiar, because if you cover everything in here, you'll be covering everything thoroughly. It's also been recently updated with help of Pacific Northwest National Laboratory to help cover all the new decarbonization and electrification goals of the government,
Absolutely.
Department of Energy.
So I was going to mention basically some of the same things, that not only does this competency and task list cover the multiple certification exams, but this is also the basis if you're striving or working toward achieving accreditation, which is further down the list.
Absolutely.
This is the same competency and task list that we're utilizing to ensuring your program is aligned
Aligning
to
that.
those standards. So we're making sure everything is even keel across the board, from the competencies that you need to teach in your program to the competencies that we want to see achieved with the certification to what we want to see being taught in the classroom.
I can remember my own time before I was associated with ESCO, and I was teaching at the distributor level, and my expectations were I needed to teach these classes: refrigeration, basic electricity, I need to teach inverter technologies, communicating systems. So we had all of these topics that needed to be covered, but no formal path. And I know for me, it was miserable trying to decide what is going to be adequate information, what is adequate content. Am I actually the one to teach this? Am I good enough to teach the things that need to be taught? So it gives us the opportunity to evaluate the program, whether it's existing or whether we're starting from scratch, and now pinpoint those areas. And then we can look at them and go, okay, we're doing very well in this area, we're really struggling in this, so either I'm going to have to start teaching more, or I might even have to learn a little bit more about myself to know which level I need to increase. So there's a lot of analytics that goes into this, which Howard and Eugene and I did on a previous episode where we talked about how to utilize the tools to assess where your assessments are, both for your class and for yourself as an instructor. So big place to start when you're involved in your program.
Well, and I think it's important. People, when they look at national standards, they say, oh, I know what to teach.
Right.
And I think one of the best
Do you?
We had a little meeting at the National HVAC Education Conference where a lot of the major manufacturers were. And a comment that came out of the room was, we're trying to teach people on a Ferrari, and we still have people who want to teach carburetors.
Yes.
And what a lot of people don't realize, look, they changed the speed limit in your state. Whether you like it or not, the speed limit changed. You work on cars. If you're a mechanic at a Ford dealership, new cars are coming whether you want them or not.
That's right.
Same thing's happening in HVAC. So either prepare yourself for it, or we're going to find ourselves obsolete very quickly.
Absolutely. All right, so now we've looked at our program, right? We've gotten ourselves established. We've looked at what we are providing for material. What about the actual curriculum for the program? There's a lot of different information out there, right? Once we have figured out what we need to teach, then it's a matter of selecting what material we're going to teach from. Am I going to go home and spend an extra 50 hours a week trying to map out every little thing that I know about basic electricity? Or am I going to find a resource that is already crosswalked on all of these competencies, or at least a majority of those competencies? So there's a lot of curriculum out there, and the majority of the curriculum that we work with follows a very specific requirement. And Howard, I know you like to run with this one quite a bit.
Going back to the competency list, till about 15 years ago, an instructor would take that and they'd have to spend countless hours highlighting if they covered those things, and if not, figure out where to integrate them in their program.
Exactly.
Most of the major publishers, including ESCO, we do this for our own, but if you take a look at whether it be Cengage, Goodhart Wilcox, Pearson, etc., if they have the HVAC Excellence logo on their book, that means that they have crosswalked that book to the competencies, and they've covered at least 80% of them. That means somewhere they have, if you search around on their site, a correlation. So for example, it may tell you, if you're teaching your students about heat pumps, what chapters your students have to read, where each competency is covered, and if one of the competencies is not covered, they'll identify it so you can easily integrate it into your program. And Eugene, considering you're an author of the book, you want to take that a step further.
I figured he was going with that, so I was already over here taking a little bit of time trying to locate this so we could see, but that's exactly what we're talking about. And so as you can see right there, HVAC Excellence already on the front of the book, showing that it's already crosswalk so that you are keeping your curriculum consistent with the expectations of your program.
So, and on that one, Clifton, if you're on Cengage's site,
Yep.
at the very bottom of where you found the refrigeration, air conditioning technology book and instructor, where it says view as an instructor, they're going to find the correlations at the bottom of the page. And when we update the competency and task list, we send that out. So it's an easy way for an instructor to quickly find out, does this cover the competencies I need for my students to be successful?
Fantastic.
And one thing that the publishers did, and they all did it, it shows not only that, yes, we cover this competency, but where in the book it's covered.
Mhm.
Oh,
So this
okay.
makes it easier for teachers to say, okay, well, I need to teach this, and they don't have to search through the table of contents or the index. It'll say right there, this is in chapter 5 or unit 12.
Exactly.
So the publishers did a really decent job of helping instructors identify not only the content that needs to be taught, but where it can be found.
And that's huge. When you're starting from scratch and you're trying to look through your own material and go, okay, I know we're covering this. Is it useful? Is this crosswalked? Is this material that can be, very important for the student as they progress? Because what if they progress past our program? Have we covered the things in our program that allows them to move forward with other industry partners? And we see that quite often.
And
Well, to
what's
tie
nice
these
about-
two things together, I was just going to say the competency list is a map. What do I need to teach?
That's right.
Now you've got books that have been crosswalked, making it easy. You know you're covering everything.
That's
So
right.
whether you're using our stuff, which we hope you'll look at, whether it be our e-learning or print, or Cengage, Goodhart, Wilcox, Pearson, etc., you have tools that have all been mapped to those competency and task lists.
Absolutely.
And just to drill down real quickly, if you look at the competency and task list, you really get to pick and choose what it is your program teaches. So in New York, for example, on Long Island, we teach oil heat. Well, not in all geographic areas in the country do we teach oil heat.
Good point.
So you can actually go through the competency and task list and find those subject areas that apply to your program or the course that you're teaching.
And in your region.
So it really, really drills down into the specifics. So a lot of the sorting has been done for you.
Absolutely. All right, so we've gotten ourselves established so we can get connected to resources. We've reviewed our program. We've reviewed our content. Now we're ready to start doing some actual teaching, but then we also need to make sure that along that way, we are assessing progress for our students as well, right? So what about becoming a proctor? I mean, Renee, is this probably a question you get quite often? How do I manage my EPA test? How do I manage these assessment tests?
Well, the number one and easiest step is to go to our website and find that proctor application. That is the first step to getting registered with us as a proctor. So if you go to the escogroup.org, find certifications, and scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll find that nice little icon there that will allow you to fill out the proctor application. Once that application comes in, a member of our team will be in contact with you, usually within 24 to 48 hours. May have some questions about your program, about what materials you are looking for, how you want to administer your testing, because we have both online and paper testing options.
Exactly.
Once we cover all those details, hopefully we get you all set up and you are good to go. But once that happens, you are not alone. We are always here, and we have a customer service team to answer all your questions at any time. So while we do try to go through thoroughly some of the processes and how to administer those exams, we know that some things happen between that day we talk to you and when you actually give the exam. So
Right.
we're always here to answer those questions on how we can help and make it easier for you and your students.
So now our customer service number is toll-free 1-800-726-9696 for that.
And I think what people will find unique We have real people who actually answer the phone.
Yeah, it's not an automated service.
8 to 5. You're not going to get a menu-driven system. You'll get a real person. And I just want to say something. Look, if you're a public school, Perkins Funds requires you to give these tests.
That's true.
But what it really came down to is non-comparability from school to school,
Right.
teacher to teacher. For example, the employment ready test. So if you took the time to look at the competencies, now you got a book like Eugene's that maps to it. How do you validate the student took advantage of that and is ready? This is a very inexpensive way to have a third-party national test. I just went to a program advisory meeting last Thursday. One of the things the contractors, the employers want to know is, what are people going to know when they leave here?
Right.
And I said, well, we're all looking to buy vehicles. Clifton, you're in it, or better yet, Eugene, you're in California. Gas is $10 a gallon or whatever. He wants an economic car. I'm in Colorado. I want all-wheel drive, different features and benefits. To me, the students coming out of the program, they're the product. I need to know as an employer what features and benefits they'll have. So what does this class mean? Will they know how to use a meter? Do they know Ohm's law? What the employment ready tests are doing, they're typically 100 question tests, discipline specific, very inexpensive way of getting third party to verify that the student has the retained knowledge necessary for employment in that area.
Absolutely. I was going to back up and hop onto those, but it might take me just a minute to get to that certification one, because not everyone understands that, certifications aren't just for the students, it's for us as well as instructors. So if we're looking for all of those resources on the homepage, we go into the certification, and that's not just a few certifications. We have a variety of opportunities on that certification page.
There's about 80 certifications in each of those categories.
Yeah, a lot going on there. All right, so we're set up for a proctor. We're ready to start having some classes, doing some tests. Now we're ready to start moving out into our classrooms. Now, when we start talking about equipment, we know that many programs have been utilizing equipment that's been around for a while, may not have had a campaign to start improving our technologies. We spend a lot of time talking about how our industry is changing and we have new technologies that we have to focus on. Well, how do you connect with the rest of the industry to make those connections? I mean, do you just start calling every manufacturer? Anyone ever hopped on a manufacturer's customer support line? Good luck. You're not going to get accomplished in your normal workday. So, are there resources out there for connecting with manufacturers and distributors?
Yes. The HVAC Education Resource Network, or HERN. The best way I'll explain this, for anyone over the age of 40, it's the yellow pages of who to call. Anyone under the age of 40, go find a old Superman show. He used to have to find the phone booth, and there was a phone booth. There was a directory of who to call. So we work with manufacturers of equipment, tools, test instruments, curriculum. HERN is a free resource. It's
Free.
a donation program. So just as a quick aside, a good example would be the other day I talked to a gentleman. His program was closed in 2015. They're trying to reopen it up.
Right.
They've got the nucleus of a good program, but it's not modern. So they need to reach out to the manufacturers to find out what they can get.
What do we need?
So all we're doing is we're connecting you to the right people who could take care of you. You don't have to go through a menu-driven system. And by the time you get a real human being at most manufacturers, you won't remember why you called.
Yeah, absolutely. Renee, I'm sure you probably get calls regularly on, hey, how do I get equipment for my classroom? I know everyone's talking about new technologies. Where do I even begin?
That is the number one question. Where do I find the equipment? I'm sure the vendors coming back from the conference.
Oh yeah,
weeks
they're
ago
getting slammed.
Had a lot of those questions as the attendees were moving around the room. But that is a huge component, and that's a much needed component in these types of programs, so that students get the opportunities to get those hands-on experience. So through the HERN program, we are able to connect the educators and the administrators with the right people for the equipment and tools that they're looking for. So you're not just going to go to the page and find a list of here's who to contact. We actually have you fill out a request for assistance, or somewhat like an application, where we're going to learn a little bit about your program and what it is that you're trying to do so that
Right.
we can connect you with the right people to help you achieve your goals with your program.
Yeah, the correct resources. I think about you, Eugene. You're very well known for revamping a program. Well, what if I was to send you an electric furnace? I'm a manufacturer and I'm trying to find someone that needs some new equipment, and I send Eugene up in New York an electric furnace. Was it really appropriate for the program? Or what about the boiler guy down the road that has a new piece of equipment that might serve the institution a little bit better?
Yeah, so I've actually had people ask me, what is HERN? So we said, HERN is the HVACR Education Resource Network. And I always joke with people, I'm like, if you read Hebrew, this industry is really, really easy to understand. Because if you read Hebrew, HERN is really a network of resources for those involved in the education of the HVACR industry.
I absolutely love it.
And resources include equipment and tools and instrumentation, but it's also curriculum. It's also resources. It's also, all of the things that together create the program. So one thing that HERN is not, it's not, what can you give me for free?
Exactly.
But it's also alerting educators to what programs are available to them as far as maybe discounts, maybe opportunities to visit facilities. So when I was teaching in New York, I always took advantage of every opportunity I could to have remote classes.
Absolutely.
To bring in guest lecturers who happened to be in the neighborhood, in the area, doing some other event. So it's really about giving instructors the support in whatever form that may take. It's not always tangible equipment. Like I said, it might be guest lectures, it might be field trip opportunities, it might be curriculum, it might be printed material. That these, when you're setting up a program, you want PT charts, you want, system diagrams. So a lot of the manufacturers have these instructor packets that they send out to schools, which basically is a set of posters or diagrams or pictures or trainers. I remember a TXV manufacturing company, they don't make them anymore, but they actually made hand-tight thermostatic expansion valves for educators. And they were yours for the asking. These things were expensive.
Sure, absolutely. And time-consuming.
It was actually thermostatic expansion valves that you could, again, unscrew, and you could show your students how the needle and seat function.
Right.
So this network, it was absolutely an amazing resource. And again, something that I wish was in place when I was starting out in the classroom.
That's right. When we were sketching on whiteboards with chalk and trying to, to show the different fittings of sheet metal versus having a manufacturer's sheet metal display that shows all the different fittings and part numbers.
You had a whiteboard? I had a chalkboard and an overhead projector.
Did you have a chisel?
That's right.
The thing I learned at the conference, all these young instructors who don't know where to go for resources.
Yeah.
I was just actually dumbfounded how many of them don't know what Perkins funds were.
Oh, yeah, true.
So, there's so many resources available. Everyone's like, oh, can you give me equipment? There's federal funds from Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Improvement Act. I was talking to one gentleman this morning who met someone from the U.S. government at our conference who told them about 15 different grant
federal grants. Oh, I can imagine.
That sometimes you're not going to get them, but they're good exercises for once you're not afraid of filling out this paperwork, it becomes very easy to do it.
Absolutely. All right, so we're progressing through. We've looked at all of our curriculum. We've decided that we have quality material. What about our actual program and forming to industry standards? That's when we start getting into the accreditation side. And that is one that has been more prevalent here recently, and I'd like for us to spend some time talking about that.
We all going to fight over who's going to jump in?
No, this is a very important one. Let's take your picks on it.
What accreditation is, I want to back up and just give everyone a little bit longer information than they want. There's institutional accreditation and programmatic. So a lot of times someone's going to say, well, I thought we were already accredited.
Right.
Institutional accreditation is required so that the institution itself, the community college,
That's right.
has been validated that it can properly allocate funds so it can give out student loans, Pell Grants, Perkins funds, etc. That does not attest to the quality of the programs.
Right.
So when you look at a community college, which could have hundreds of programs, no singular organization could go look at
Every
computer
single thing.
science, nursing, welding.
Right.
So programmatic accreditation is something that is very specific to the program, where a non-governmental third-party peer review is done against established standards. HVAC Excellence is the oldest and largest accrediting agency in the HVAC industry. We've been doing this since 1999. It is a third party where you're, here, what are you really doing? The accreditation manual, if you go to escogroup.org, click on accreditation, you could view the manual. There's 9 standards. Each standard has subsets under it. So the first 4 standards are really about the institutional side, the mission of the program, your financing, your student placement. Standards 5 through 9 are what we really call the meat of the accreditation. They're going to talk about the equipment, the tools, lab design, instructor qualifications. There's a voluntary process to make certain that your program meets all these basic standards.
Absolutely.
So the old story is whether you're going to get accredited or not. If you're a brand new instructor, I would download a copy of this right now. I would look at it and start asking myself, do I do these things? If not, what would I need to do to make changes in my program? So when that day does come where you say, I'm ready to accredit my program, it'll be a piece of cake.
Yeah, and it gives you the opportunity to do an entire walkthrough and get an idea of what your program looks like, especially when we dive into the self-study, to get a personal evaluation of my own program. Before someone comes and walks through my program to let me know what is right and what is not, I have the opportunity to look thoroughly at it myself and do an internal investigation.
And what I also do, Clifton, when I speak to instructors or administrators at schools, and even if they don't meet the criteria to get accredited, even if they don't have the minimum number of hours, even if they don't have the required space, I always tell instructors and administrators, get a hold of this manual.
Right.
Because even if you ultimately decide that you're not able to get accredited, you can still follow along, you can still implement, you can still apply a lot of these standards to your program. So even though you don't have HVAC Excellence programmatic accreditation, you're definitely taking steps to improve the efficacy and efficiency of your program. You're bringing your program to the next level.
That's right.
Whether or not you can make the commitment to get accredited. And it's like Howard said, it's a free download.
It's a free resource.
Go to
Yeah.
the website, you download it, and you have at it. And I think even whether you're a new instructor or a seasoned instructor or an administrator, there are definitely things in this manual that you will learn from. Wow, you know what? This is an easy fix. I can implement this easily. And by doing X, Y, and Z, like I said, I'm improving the quality of my program, which is ultimately going to help your students do better, improve placement rates, make the ultimate consumers of your product, your graduates, happier.
Absolutely. Quite the laid out blueprint. Yes.
Standard 5.4, for example, addresses safety. I love this one because it's probably one of the most important. A lot of schools say, well, I teach safety. Well, do you document it? It would be on page 16, one more page. So one of the things that we always talk about when you bring someone into your school, what do you do to teach them safety? Each time you bring up new technology, how are you incorporating it? How are you documenting? Why? I'm going to give a quick story to everyone, which will send chills down their back. We know of an instructor who found out that a former student, it was their student about 12 years prior, had died using an aluminum ladder near a power line. The family sued the person they worked for, the school, the state, and the instructor. That teacher showed up in court with a 12-year-old signed safety exam.
Right.
That safety exam was the difference between losing and winning that lawsuit.
Sure.
So it's one of those things these things are meant to protect people for a reason. But the real history of programmatic accreditation, I'll just share something real quick. Programmatic accreditation goes back to the medical industry about 100 years ago.
Yes.
How do you make certain you have a medical program that is going to succeed? Let's face it, 100 years ago, doctors were still, more people died than lived when they went to see them.
Exactly.
Well, in the 1990s, career tech programs started seeing technology moving so quick.
Yeah.
Government cannot keep up with the technological advancements. Why is that important? Because the main reasons that there was a thrust for programmatic accreditation, all the trades in the 90s, that's the same today, but much worse. When you start taking a look at the last year has seen more technological changes in the HVAC industry than you've probably seen in the last 20.
Absolutely has.
So people should really be taking a look. Am I meeting? And to me, this is just minimum industry standards. Doesn't mean you're an exemplary program.
What if I'm an administrator and I'm wanting to validate that my program is maintaining the national standards? It's an opportunity for administration to review their own programs, and it's a checklist of everything that is required from a management perspective.
Clifton, we just all, the four of us were at a conference. We listened to manufacturers, said there's some great schools out there and some not so great ones. How do we differentiate? Some of them talked about students who graduated from schools didn't know how to use a multimeter, didn't know very basic things. Standards matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Renee?
No, one of the things I was just going to mention is that, excuse me, with the accreditation, it is a voluntary thing for a school or a program to do, and it's not absolutely critically necessary for you to work with us in other ways. Because there is some confusion about that out there in the industry that, well, in order for me to give your test or in order for me to utilize your curriculum, we have to become accredited.
Oh,
That's
good
not
point.
Really the case.
Right.
So we want to make sure that you are aware that these are all separate processes. They all go hand in hand and they all work together, but one is independent of the other. We certainly want to see schools and programs striving to achieve that accreditation because you are meeting
setting a higher standard.
Right. You are meeting and setting that higher standard for not only for your program, but for your students, to make sure your students are getting the best education that you can give them. But if you'd like to work with us in other ways, curriculum, certification, testing, working with the HERN program, you don't have to complete this process first. Let us help you get there.
And that's
an excellent point.
Just to expand a little bit on what Renee said, true programmatic accreditation sets standards. How you meet those standards is up to you. So, for example, if we say, for example, if we say you need to be EPA certified,
right?
It doesn't say you need to be EPA certified by ESCO.
Right.
You have to meet these standards, but we don't say, oh, you have to use this textbook.
Only our material or only this material.
Right. So we set the standards, which is the bar. But how you meet those standards is entirely up to you. So that just puts the little dot on Renee's I and crosses her little T.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point.
It's not required that you use, you don't have to be accredited to use our services.
Right.
But using the associative property, you don't have to use our services to get accredited.
Exactly.
And you know what, both of you, that's a great point. I'll just share something with you. A lot of people, they look at it and they say, wait, you can accredit a program, you could credential a teacher, you could verify a student took advantage of it. We see this 6-point process, all these great things that do things. Yes, together they all do great things, but they're all independent of one another.
Sure.
So the Code of Federal Regulations, which is, imagine you got a library of books. CFR 34 is book 34. That's the book that deals with federal regulations on accreditation. And it specifically states accrediting agencies can set standards. They cannot mandate use a specific product. That's why people ask, why don't you mandate I use Eugene's book or your
Absolutely.
book? And that is why. Our goal is to make certain you meet a certain standard. If you decide you want to write your own textbook, you're welcome to do it. We just need to make certain it covers the competencies.
It covers the competencies. Patrick Murphy, yeah. Patrick, we appreciate you joining us. So we had whiteboards, and Patrick says he had the chisel. So he's been around that long. We sure appreciate your input on that. All right, so we talk about our programs, looking at our own programs. What about looking at ourselves? You know, an important part of being an educator is knowing that we are providing the right curriculum, that our program is meeting some recognized standards. But what about the educational level of ourselves? When we come out of the field, you know, typically we have been very experienced. You know, we've probably been tested technically so that our programs know that we have instructors coming in that should be able to teach some of the basic fundamentals, right? You would hope that that would be the standard, but how do you test someone? If somebody comes out of the field and let's say they're in the Midwest and they say, I am great at refrigeration, and somebody from the West Coast comes in and says, I also am great at refrigeration, and someone from the East Coast goes, I am the best at refrigeration. Well, how do we actually know? What if I'm just a technician out in the field? I can use assessments as well to see who is qualified to do particular jobs based on how much they actually know. So shouldn't we have a standard for ourselves? And we should.
Gene, you want to discuss what you said at the 2010 conference when you earned CMHE?
Oh man, you know
Your
what?
tongue twister? You
Oh
don't
yeah,
know what you don't know?
yeah. My theory has been, if a teacher doesn't know it, they can't teach it. If the teacher doesn't teach it, the students don't learn it. If the students don't learn it, they can't do it. But one of the biggest challenges is, how does a teacher or any individual know or find out about what they don't know?
Yeah, not the do's, the don'ts.
Yeah. So when I first started taking the series of CSME exams, collectively, which results in the CMHE credential, it was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
Because I thought that I knew everything. So I walked in expecting to ace these exams and have the red carpet rolled out and have this gold trophy presented to me, on national TV. Oh no, that's the Emmys. But it was an eye-opening experience, because these exams are not easy exams.
No, and especially the professional level.
Most industry exams, whatever industry you're in, passing score on exams is 70%. Well, the passing score on these exams is 80%. And although we discussed earlier that the questions on these exams are based on the competency and task list, the complexity of the questions is a lot higher. So you can't expect, or you should hold a teacher to a higher level of understanding that.
Absolutely.
So having an instructor pass a technician level exam is good, but it's really not ensuring that your instructor is well prepared, is the right person. They need to have a deeper level of understanding of the theories and concepts and competencies that we're teaching. So these I challenge everybody out there.
Oh boy.
If you're teaching
thrown
and you have not taken exams, go for it.
Test yourself.
Yeah, you know what? It's always nice to know what you don't know. And these exams really help you plan out your professional development. Because what is professional development? It's there to help us develop professionally. Again, if you read Hebrew, we're in good shape.
Right.
So how do you develop professionally if you don't know where you need help?
The assistance.
So these exams, I thought it would be a walk in the park. When I finally passed my last exam back in 2010, there were literally only 24 individuals nationwide who had the CMHE credential.
Who had accomplished that.
And I personally took this as a major accomplishment. It
Absolutely.
really pushed me when I finally passed. I didn't pass every exam the first time.
Right.
Contrary to popular belief.
I actually remember the conversation, Eugene. You called me up and you said it took me a little while to get over my own ego, that I'm an author, and you said it's not about me, it's about my students.
Yes.
And you said you don't
Amen.
know what you don't know. If you don't know it, you don't teach it. If you don't teach it, they don't learn it.
Yep.
So I'll just bring up something real simple. 21 years ago, George Bush pushed through something called No Child Left Behind.
Yep.
NCLB on the surface had a lot of different elements, but one element that was very simple to me was all teachers should be capable of teaching the competencies of their own
Yeah,
curriculum.
an equivalency.
Sounds simple, right? But we taught in K-12, we learn English every year, yet over 70% of kids who go to college have to take remedial English. Why? Okay, there's a lot of deficiencies in the system, and it goes back to taking a look at these educator credentialing tests in the K-12 system. A lot of people weren't passing them. Now, when you get into HVAC, part of the problem is I'm not just teaching math or just teaching English. I'm
Teaching a variety
all
of subjects. Yeah.
Right. So you want me to be if you're a doctor, if we were doctors, the four of us would be with 20 other doctors teaching all these different disciplines. As where we're asking one person, here's a 2-year
Teach them
program,
all.
go teach everything.
That's right.
So
Yeah, but
I encourage everyone, even if you get an 80%, you didn't pass. What's the 20% you don't know? We send you a blueprint, look at it. It's meant for building your professional development. Challenge yourself to learn what you don't know.
Absolutely.
Howard, you mentioned doctors. Doctors only work on 2 different models. How many models do HVAC people work?
We have a variety. All right, so we've looked at our own department. We've decided that we've got the right curriculum. We got the right pass. We've tested ourselves. We know that we're on a good direction. How do we maintain that momentum? And how do we get support for our program to make sure that our students are being well received once they leave our program, right? Our job is to prepare a student for a job. So are we properly preparing them for that next level? So when we start talking about the advisory committee, this was something that I had to learn a lot about when I got here. And we have a lot of resources on understanding what that advisory committee is and what they do for a program. It's an opportunity for our program to connect with the rest of the industry. Maybe not even just our local contractor, and maybe not just 1 or 2 local contractors, but actually involving other people from our industry. So let's talk a little bit about an advisory committee and a proper design and resources for building that committee.
This is another one we're all going to jump in because we're all very passionate about the advisory committee program.
This could be
All
a
of us
3-hour
actually
conversation right
participate
here.
in advisory committees ourselves. So we're not preaching to you anything that we're not doing ourselves
willing.
to and not participating in. So your best starting point is to start pulling in people from all facets of the industry, not just the people surrounding you, not just your buddies down the hall in the other departments. You actually want to find your local contractors, your local businesses that are hiring your students or have the potential to hire your students so that you can start getting feedback from these places and individuals on, are your students, did they attempt hiring one and did it not work out? Why not?
Why?
Efficiencies and what they knew or
Sure.
how they were performing. That is huge, including industry organizations that may have chapters or resources in your area, benefits for your students, benefits for your program. You never know who you are going to meet or run into. So this is a very, very strong area and an area where
And overlooked.
to really, really keep up and get that participation from industry.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
This could
Can I
be.
tell a story of 2 tales real quick? I've been to schools where they are just trying to satisfy that requirement. Hey, everyone, thanks for being here. We're forced to do this. Have a bologna sandwich, leave. Thanks for coming. You've wasted my time. I'm probably not going to come back. I've been to other schools where someone is standing at the front door waiting to greet you. They take you down to the HVAC program. Instead of setting it up in a classroom, it is set up in a horseshoe where we're all looking at each other. They take the time to explain how many months is this program?
Right.
What courses are offered, featured and benefit? Like
Show and tell.
I want to know. So you're 20 months, you have 6-week classes. Class 1 is this. Here's everything the student's going to need to know. You can use it right from our competency and task list. What industry certifications? Show me the toolkit. Now take me on a tour. Let me see your tool room. Let me see your equipment. Now ask for feedback. Okay? Those who do what I said in the second one typically have waiting lists to get in the program.
Exactly. They're actually being driven by the community.
Right.
Eugene?
In our resource area, like I said, this conversation on advisory boards could literally be a 4-hour conversation onto itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we have on our website, in our resource area for proctors, there is a document on how to conduct an advisory board meeting, basically who you need to invite and what you need to do to make it a success. As Renee said, all of us that are on this meeting right now, we all participate in multiple advisory boards. Between the 4 of us, we're probably on at least a dozen and a half or 2 dozen of them collectively. And we've been to really good advisory board meetings. We've been to some that maybe need a little bit of help. So I think we really need to direct you to that resource, because we can't cover it all. It's really an opportunity for you to improve the efficacy of your program, and to make certain, one of the biggest things is you need to have administrative representation at these meetings, because they need to hear what industry is saying. So think about, and I'll just chime this in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
What if you're a teacher and you say, and you hear from, and the teacher says to the administrator, we need to teach mini splits. Well, now the administrator is being told by the instructor, the instructor wants mini splits. But what if a contractor is telling the administrator at these advisory board meetings, I need my new hires, I need your program graduates to know mini splits. Now the administrator is telling the instructor, you need to get mini splits. Now it's coming from the higher ups. So it really is all about effective information sharing, not just grab a bologna sandwich and sit down, but it really is about effective communication in the right direction. From the instructor up to administration is one thing, but from administration telling the instructors or faculty, completely different. So these advisory boards can be extremely powerful mechanisms to improve the quality of your program and getting administrative support and buy-in at the same time. But yeah, we have manuals on how to do this. We've spelled it out.
Right.
I mean, we've gone through the good, the bad, and the ugly on how to do that.
But can I say something on that? So Renee mentioned the same 2 or 3 people and what Eugene's talking about, building on it. If you come to my school and I'm the teacher and I'm Howard Weiss, and you see on my minutes, the other people attending the meetings are Zach Weiss and Max Weiss. I just invited family members. I see that very often, where basically we're just trying to fulfill it. I don't care if your local utility is not hiring anyone, invite them. Some of the local supply houses, your supermarket chain. If you have a diverse program advisory committee that represents the industry, they're going to give you feedback on
what they're looking for.
And what they're looking for.
Absolutely.
I had to share one thing on that with you. I was at the ACCA conference last week.
Mm-hmm.
They had almost 400 people there. And at a general session, they said, how many contractors here actively are involved in a program advisory committee? Only 2 hands went up.
Oh, that's a good question. While we're right here, before we move on to personal development, everyone joining in, let us know, are you actively participating in a program yourself? Very curious to see here. Because if you're not, you have the opportunity to make a differences in your own communities.
Big time.
Yeah. We'll give that one a second to see if that comes through. So what about continued education? Right? So when we talk about education, we're here to bring enlightenment to our students, to educate them on an industry, to prepare them for jobs in our local communities. What about ourselves? How do we personally begin continuing education? And there's a variety of resources on that. We want to connect you to many of those. So let's talk for a minute about resources, particularly through the e-learning network. Remember when we first talked about hopping on that e-learning network and getting your account set up? This is one of the reasons we'll keep coming back to it, to talk about additional resources for continuing your own personal education. So I know each of us have something we could dive into on that particular one. Renee, you host a lot of this. Tell us a little bit about the design of the Educator Resource Network and ways that we can continue our education as professionals.
Sure. As Clifton is displaying on the screen here, we have a whole little section or a channel dedicated specifically for educator resources. So this is where you're going to find information on the programs like Eugene was describing, that we have this whole course about program advisory committees. There's information in here for your students. But the number one reason for you to pursue continuing education and professional development is, we've said it multiple times here, things aren't the same that they were 5 years ago. And once you move into the classroom, you are out of the field.
Right.
And you're not seeing what's going on out there. So this is a way to try and stay connected to some of the technology changes, the refrigerant changes, the regulatory changes that are happening in our industry. So obviously this show is a great resource for that too.
Absolutely.
So you're subscribed if you're not already. Shameless plugs.
Shameless plugs. Did you know that there's a great resource for you?
But we do have this resource center dedicated specifically to educators. And we're not touting that we have every single resource that you could possibly need. But if you think of any that aren't there that we can provide to you,
hey, let us know.
Great starting point, though. There's a lot of materials, a lot of free courses, a lot of things aimed specifically for you, the educator or the trainer, to help you do your job and to help you get that professional development.
And if you're a veteran instructor who's watching, we're looking for people to help develop more content to help everyone move forward. Call one of us.
Absolutely.
More shameless plugs.
More shameless plugs.
I tell people, e-learning, podcast, webcast, conference, we're trying to help keep people informed. It's plain and simple. So on the e-learning network, create an account. It's free. Look around. You're going to find, so there's almost 1,000 courses posted.
That's what's crazy. That is a free resource. People don't understand that there are a lot of things available, just as a free intro into getting that continuing education started. And we're going to add step 10, or so we call these steps. I called these steps. I probably should have just put different opportunities in boxes that we can check along the way, because it's not a path. It's not you have to go through 1 through 10 to get through the entire program. We're talking about the 10 highlights that make up for a successful path of a program. So our final one, we want to mention the staying apprised of industry standards and technologies. Participating in conferences is an incredibly important part of our educational development and our program development. I mentioned before, my first experience was 2019 to the National HVACR Education Conference, and it changed everything for my program and my personal development. So we want to make sure that you have the resources, that you have the connections to the resources. And one of those is our conference. I'm going to plug. If you want to take a quick scan, we've already established our 2024 National HVACR Education Conference. That'll be March 25th through the 27th in Las Vegas. Man, a lot of big things already planned. It was a huge year this year, and I'm sure next year, might be a even bigger, funner year than the previous. We want to make sure that you know how to connect with people out in our social media. So if you're on LinkedIn, we have a dedicated HVACR educators portion. So that is the HVACR educators page within LinkedIn. If you're on Facebook, we just started a HVAC Excellence Facebook page that is within ESCO Institute. We'd love for you to hop in there with us. And all else fails, let's head to escogroup.com, and this will get you back there to our main website. So that's a lot of things to cover. That is our top 10 picks of ways to have a successful program and a path to successful program. Anyone have any questions or comments while we have the opportunity? And I want to leave this open for a little bit. I had a comment last week that someone was actually typing a message and they were taking a while to type it and it didn't come through. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time for our chat section.
Clifton, I think what people need to know, we have a large group of people that, I'll just use the word, they're evangelical. Yes, they have to make a living. They do it because they love the industry and want to give back.
Absolutely.
If you're new to teaching or you've been doing it a while, you want help, call us. That's number one. Number two, come to the conference. One of the picture you had posted is probably something a lot of people don't understand. For those who've been there, all the classes are on one side of the building, the expo's on the other, but the real action to me is what happens in the middle.
Right there.
That's for people who are, I'm brand new to teaching, I don't know what to do, runs into someone like Greg Jordan who says, I'll show you exactly how to do it. So people are willing to share their success stories and help make other people successful too.
It's funny, and you will come to learn, especially as a newer person in the industry, that as large as the industry is, it's very small. There's a lot of resources and a lot of a big circle of individuals and people and assistants out there waiting to help you.
Eugene, we have one for you. Just came in.
What's up? Oh, can I explain the Hebrew thing? Well, yeah, we read Hebrew right to left. So in our industry, what I always joke with people is if you don't know what something does in our industry, read it backwards. So for example, an evaporator pressure regulator, what does it do? It regulates pressure in the evaporator.
I love this.
A crankcase pressure regulator regulates pressure in the crankcase. So yeah, so it's a joke I have with my students who I've taught and teachers who I've had the opportunity to train. So it's always this big joke about just read it backwards. So like our HERN is our HVAC Education Resource Network. It's a network of resources for those involved in the education of HVACR. So read it backwards, and you got this industry with.
Sam, we thank you for that.
The way of saying it is the keep it simple method.
Oh, yeah.
The simplest way of saying things is the easiest way people will get it.
Indeed.
Did that clear it up, Sam? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you, bro.
Well, I think that's a wrap unless we have any last-minute chats come through. Eugene, Howard, Renee, any last-minute comments we want to leave with?
Just realize that these are 10 steps or 10 processes, and in an hour we discussed 10. So each one of these areas we could really be discussing.
Have their own show.
For an extremely long period of time. This would have been like a 4-day
It sounds like Eugene's volunteering, signing up. I don't know.
I might have been intentional on designing this in 10 separate categories, maybe.
One of these really is a separate topic. We did scratch the surface. We encourage everybody to visit escogroup.org and just dive in and explore. You know, that doesn't cost anything to visit the website.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we thank you all once again for joining Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. We hope that you all are enjoying yourself and that you come back next week. And I'm so excited to announce that tomorrow we are going to be releasing the Did You Know HVAC podcast. New little add-on. And how about we throw a little fun outro just to talk a little bit about what the new HVAC podcast is going to be like. So everyone, have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. I am so excited to tell you about this new opportunity. We're launching a new podcast channel. Did you know, the ESCO HVAC podcast? It's going to be a lot of fun. We're having 15 to 20 minute stories from our industry, and there will be 5 different flavors of stories for your listening entertainment. Windshield Chronicles is a mental sequence of operation to prepare you for a job or a scenario. Tales from the Trenches? Yeah, that's the horror stories that we have learned out in the field and in the classroom. Soften Your Senses? That's different ways to become a better speaker, listener, and follower. teaching the unteachables, well, that's ways for teaching and for learning. And welcome to the future. Those are the technologies and innovations that sculpt our industry. We are so excited about this opportunity, and we encourage you to join us.